Welcome to the Streetwise Property Pulse, your weekly resource for the latest Ontario financing and real estate investment updates, where we provide you with timely updates and perspectives from leading real estate practitioners, answer your burning questions, and share with you valuable tips and strategies. This is Dalia Barsoum from Streetwise Mortgages. On today's episode, we are speaking with Lena Girguis. She is the VP of Operations of NV Property Management. And we are discussing how the new environment has impacted rental demand and rents in the various key Ontario investment markets, as well as share with you the emerging strategies for showing and managing your rental properties. Lena, welcome. Please tell us briefly about your company and the rental markets you cover.
Hi, Dalia. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. So NV Property Management is a full-service asset management firm. We are very much investor solution driven, and what that means is we offer a wide range of services to assist property investors in any aspect of their investment journey. So if an investor is looking for assistance only to place a tenant into a unit, we've got a solution. If an investor is looking to create systems, processes that they're able to implement and self-manage while growing their portfolio, we've got a solution. And for the investors who are looking for complete hands-off management of their portfolios, it's what we do best. We cover Eastern Ontario, the capital region, so Ottawa and surrounding areas, as well as the Ottawa Valley. And we go from Durham region all the way across the 401, 407, and down to Niagara Falls. So we do have quite a huge territory that we service. And as investors ourselves, we very much take the approach with every one of our clients' properties as we would with our own. So the goals are always to optimize performance, minimize the waste, and never sacrifice the quality of product that we're putting out there for our tenants.
Lena, what kind of a shift are you seeing in the rental markets you operate in?
So this is a very interesting question. I thought that we were going to see a huge decline in the market itself when it came to the demand for rentals. And we have been unbelievably busy. We've been renting units in record times. You know, a week, 2 weeks, no showings, and these units are filling up. And what we're finding is a lot of people who were co-living before. So, you know, friends who were living together to save some money, couples who were sharing 2-bedroom apartments in hopes to save some money. Now that they're all at home together, working at home together, quarantined, they're looking now for their own spaces. So they're willing to spend a little bit more to have their own personal space. And with this, it's resulted in a higher demand, obviously, but also stability in price. So outside of the Toronto market, so downtown Toronto has been very different, but outside of that market, Hamilton, Niagara Falls, York Region, Durham, out in Ottawa, we are seeing a steady increase both in the demand and the price points. We haven't had to get creative. We haven't had to discount our, list prices. We haven't had to offer incentives, and we're really not seeing properties sit for more than 2 to 3 weeks at a time. In Toronto, specifically with the condos, we are seeing about a 10% decrease. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there are quite a bit of short-term rental investors who really are feeling the pain from this pandemic and are looking to mitigate their losses by offering some longer-term options at slightly decreased price points.
Are you seeing tenants struggle with paying rent or refusing to pay rent due to the pandemic? If so, to what extent, and what strategies do you recommend that landlords consider to work with their tenants?
So for us, we've only seen about 10% of our tenant base who have really had a hard time making full rent payment each month since this pandemic started. That means 90% of them are continuing as they always have, which is wonderful. For us, what we spent the last 2 weeks of March doing really was helping educate our tenants on what it is that they can expect from us as a company and what we expect in return from them as our tenants. We've been very focused on keeping the communication lines open. I know that it's very scary when rent is not coming in, especially when you've got mortgages and property taxes and other bills due. But it's very important that as investors, we are understanding to our tenants and we recognize that they're people too. They're stressed out just like we are. And if we're able to show them that we're here to work with them, that we need to get paid because we need to keep that roof over their head, but at the same time, we're here to work with them, you're really able to find solutions that they're going to respect. And because they respect it, they're going to honor those agreements. We've also offered, in situations where our, clients don't have the option to provide discount or rent relief, we've offered gift cards for those who might be struggling with groceries or, the basic necessities that have now increased because everybody's at home. The goal is always to find a solution that meets the needs of the tenant as well as the investor. And the number one thing for any investor who is dealing with a tenant who is having issues when it comes to making ends meet right now, keep those communication lines open. Keep the emotion out of it and look at how it is that you can assist them in understanding why it's important for them to continue to do the best that they can to meet these obligations.
How do you suggest that landlords currently handle a non-payment of rents when evictions are not possible?
Non-payment. Okay, so this is a very challenging situation right now for landlords. The Landlord and Tenant Board is not able to issue any type of eviction orders. They're not, scheduling any hearing dates. And as an investor, what on earth are we supposed to do? Number one, understand that all because they're not issuing the hearing dates doesn't mean that you're not allowed to follow every single one of the legal steps required to get that date. So file the N4s in a timely manner. File your L1s in a timely manner. And during this entire stage of limbo, let's call it, do what you can to open the lines of communication with your tenants and find ways to negotiate with them to either make some form of payment or to voluntarily find a place that's better suited for their new circumstances. Please don't change the locks. That's not legal. And the Landlord and Tenant Board will hear the application if the tenant files it against you for committing that illegal act. Don't take matters into your own hands. It's a very high stress situation. I know that it is. I definitely encourage you to seek legal advice if you are in a situation where you've got a tenant who's, been horrible long before, this pandemic hit. But for those of us who are dealing with it today because of the pandemic, step one is always find a way to resolve it before you need to file for a hearing. Can you create a payment plan? Are they going to be able to live up to it? And give them the opportunity to make those payments as agreed. But the minute that there's a default, file the N4, file your L1, and secure your spot. All because they're not scheduling those hearings today doesn't mean that they're not going to schedule them later. And those tenants need to understand that all of that rent is due one day or another. And if they don't pay it, they have to leave. So do they want to be leaving voluntarily or do they want to be removed by the sheriff?
What kind of changes have you as a property manager made to your day-to-day operations to take into account the pandemic and the social distancing?
So the biggest change that we have had to accommodate within our own business right now is how we're handling leasing. So we're obviously not doing showings the way that we used to. Everything right now is being done with a virtual tour. And once we have an applicant who has submitted an application that has been approved, we're allowing that one individual to go in, take a look at the space, and make sure that it really does meet the needs that they have, as well as meet the expectations that were created through that virtual tour. Units that are occupied by tenants, when we're showing those, if we really have to, what we do is obviously we supply masks as well as gloves to our prospective applicant. Again, they have to have first been approved before we will take them into the home. And we obviously will not, it's a no-touch policy. So we, the member of staff, goes in wearing their personal protective equipment, and they'll turn on all the lights, they'll open all the doors, and it's very clear, please go through the space, don't touch anything, keep your gloves on, keep your masks on, and once we're out of the unit, we can continue our conversation. And then as a company, we'll go through, we kind of sanitize anything that we did touch. So countertops, if we touched a surface, light switches, all of that stuff. Interviews, pre-screening, all of that is being done online as well prior. Again, Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, these are all great tools that we have that we're using. And the other major shift has been in how we're handling maintenance. Obviously, emergencies are emergencies. They have to be addressed. Sometimes there's no real time to kind of respond. You just have to show up and on site. And in those situations, the guys who are showing up are, in full hazmat suits. If it's a maintenance issue that could be problematic, so let's say there's potential leaking, it's not an emergency yet, but it could become a very serious problem. We've got a very thorough screening process that we go through with our tenants by phone to ensure that nobody has been showing any signs or symptoms or potential exposure to COVID. Again, anybody who's going into those units will have, their masks, their gloves, they're going to sterilize their surfaces, and the tenants are asked to be on a different level of the home where it is feasible. So if we've got a 2-story single-family home, we ask that they stay on the second level if our tradesperson is working on the first. If the tenant is able to provide access and leave for the period of time that the tradesperson is in there, we're asking them to do that as well. We're trying our best to make sure that everybody is protected, as well as ensuring that the properties aren't going to be left with unattended maintenance that could become a expensive and large problem later on.
If a unit is due for a rent increase, can a landlord legally increase the rent during the pandemic?
This is such a great question, and I really think that there's a ton of uncertainty right now with regards to rent increases. So number one, 100% we are legally allowed to increase our rents. So if you do have a tenant whose rent is set to be increased during this pandemic, if you haven't already done so, please issue that notice to increase rents. What we are doing is we're sending out a letter with our rent increases that advise the tenants that yes, we're increasing your rents, but for the next 3 months, we're going to be offering you a 2% per month discount in light of this COVID pandemic that we're all experiencing together. We have a written agreement that clearly states the amount of that 2% discount. It states what months that discount will apply. It states that the rent, the new rents at the end, so the month following the third discounted month, will be the new lawful rent and the amount that that rent will be. And it also states that the landlord and the tenant agreed that at the end of the 3-month term, we will reevaluate. And if the pandemic is still ongoing, there could be an extension to that discount. This way, as business owners, we are still doing everything that we need to be doing to maximize our asset. But at the same time, we're letting our tenants know that we see them as human beings. We recognize that they are experiencing the same uncertainty that we are, and we are, doing our part to alleviate as much of the stress that we can off of their shoulders as well.
Lena, thank you very much for your perspective and for your practical advice. On the financing front, guys, if you're using a third-party property management company to manage your properties and your lender is using leases to support the rental income on your application, it is recommended that the landlord name on the lease agreement shows as property manager's name or property management company, quote-unquote, representative for Mr. or Mrs. your name as a landlord. This way, it's clear to the lender that the property management company is collecting rents on your behalf and is representing you for that lease agreement. Also, if you're self-managing the property and you have a property management company that you own that also collects rents, always have the articles of incorporation handy, as the lenders will require them. But most importantly, if you co-own that property management company with someone else who is not part of the mortgage process or is on your application, it is really important that you bring this to your lender or broker's attention early in the process, because many lenders are going to only take into consideration the rental income that belongs to you. So to avoid surprises late in the game, discuss this early on during the process. That's it for today, guys. See you on the next episode.